So thank you for joining the Friends I View Spoilers. My name is Shaun. Obviously, I'm with my buddy Jose, as always. Well,
Hello.
a new friend here as well who decided to join the podcast, who I've known for quite many years. Yes, I'm admitting we're friends, but it's Seth Flood.
Yes, how you guys doing? All right.
So yeah, I tried to watch Seth's movie because we are going to do that whole little pub movie. And I swear to God, I go to Amazon to watch it, and because I don't have any kids, the only kids that I like are like my girl's kids, ones I'm related to, and obviously Jose's son is you can probably keep him at least seven to eight, 80% of the time, So I was trying to, and it kept telling me I needed other memberships. And by the time I enrolled in like 10 memberships, and then it still wouldn't let me watch it. So I was like, okay, cool. So we'll pick something real quick. So next week, if Seth wants to pick the movie, because I picked it again this week, kind of take my time. I'm going to take my turn on that one. But we did The Mortal Instruments on Netflix.
Right. Yes.
Before we start, Jose, what did you rate this movie as?
I gave it an 8. I was for being that it was made in 2013. I was pretty impressed, and it actually entertained me. I actually wanted to see what was going on, and I couldn't wait to see what happened next. So I found myself pretty entertained with this one. Not bad at all.
And Seth, out of 10, where do you rate this bad boy?
I would give it a 4, to be honest with you. I don't think the movie really became more of a comedy rather than anything stimulating to me. So I would definitely give it a 4.
Fair enough. Yeah, we're going to be able to discuss things, obviously. On my side, because it's a movie I would never actually go search out in a million years. I couldn't give it a 9. I couldn't give it an 8 because it's not a movie I would specifically watch again. So when I was going down my list, the highest I could give it really was a 6.
Wow.
So for me, it wasn't necessarily a shit storm of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not one that I would pay money to watch. So it couldn't get the 7, which is the requirement for that. Obviously you had your protagonist, which was Clary,
mm-hmm.
which was a good protagonist. I mean, you had one that was just kind of a normal college student, nothing real special to her. The problem was good versus evil, so that's kind of standard. The antagonist was Valentine.
Yep.
You had your inciting event, which was when she ran into JC and Isabel in the nightclub and freaked out because she thought they were killing things.
Yes.
I know Seth asked me yesterday, what's up with the symbol? And they're like, they opened it because, when you're writing a screenplay, you're opening it up with where you have to kind of give us a glimpse into the problem.
Okay.
They chose to go with the symbol and the mother talking about with her boyfriend or whatever. You should tell her about the symbol, like there's a secret here. So it was kind of catchy for that. You didn't really see much of that symbol and its importance really in the movie.
Sure.
You saw other symbols because occasionally they would tattoo symbols to them, using that wand or whatever it was. I personally, in these types of movies, I like symbols because it kind of reflects kind of a realistic or ritualistic aspect. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I think they put too much into that symbol because they didn't do nothing with that symbol. After Act One, nobody talked about that symbol. Like it wasn't fluid, you know.
Yep.
What were your thoughts on that on Act One?
I mean, for me, I thought the symbol actually played a vital role because of the fact that she was the only one that could see it at first, especially going into that club. You know, that there was certain things that she was still able to see, meaning that she was going, you know, that she had powers that she didn't know about. The block that she had on her memory, and that's how I kind of thought that it worked out. But they did use it too much in the beginning, so that's probably why they stopped using it throughout the rest of the film. So, but I thought, you know, for a fantasy movie, I thought it kind of worked because there are certain symbols in the fantasy realm that people still use or that people would use in order to make the story a little bit more valid. Seth, what about you?
So I mean, it started off pretty good. There was a lot of mystery and a lot of intrigue that would keep you wanting to want to go to the next scene. But they simply left a lot of things just unsaid or unexplained. So by the end of the movie, you're like, okay, so why was she drawing the symbol? Like, why did she? Well, she must have blacked out and started drawing the symbol. And to me, the movie was more like it's like they didn't stick to the script or they just pulled things out of it, and it wasn't really satisfying or stimulating. It wasn't logical at all, and it's just that it was just unfinished. It seems like the storyboard must have been all over the place, and for me, it was just it wasn't entertaining.
You see that's where I also agree with like Seth. Like a lot of that story, there was information that you needed to know for it to make sense. I mean, they put in a lot of action and violence, which you see a lot in the fantasy realm, especially when you're dealing with, say, vampires and werewolves and stuff like that. Because a lot of those types of movies, that's what they do, is they invest entirely in action stuff because that gets us intrigued, gets us excited. There's this suspense about it. But I think a lot of times the story gets lost in there, or there just really isn't a fully developed story behind it. Like the Valentine character and the antagonist, there was a lot to him that didn't make sense to me. Like he wanted the cup, which I get because that's the artifact that's behind everything. But that's supposed to like create more versions of things, you know? Sure. And it's like, why do you want your, I guess, daughter to drink it? Why aren't you drinking it? And why do you want her? What do you mean about being pure? She's apparently half angel, half human. How are you going to get pure, or in this case, partial demon, because he's a demon? So how are you going to get purity? Like where's pure? And then when she kicked him through the portal, where did he go? Andrew gave him the cup. So wherever he went,
she gave him a
replica. She still had the cup.
Right, but it didn't explain that.
Yeah, no, so, like I watched it and I assumed she gave him the cup, and I'm like, that's kind of fucking dumb. What are you kicking him to Michigan? Is he the reason why Flint's water is fucked up? He's sitting there drinking a cup instead of fixing the water. What's going on here?
See, I took it for what it was. It was fantasy. I was like, okay. And for me, in a fantasy movie, I don't know. I kind of let it go on a couple of issues because of that.
No, I mean, in fantasy, yeah, you can kind of make up whatever lore you want.
Sure.
Because right now, I'd written 2 fantasies. One you already read and one that we're reading over now. I make up entire lore. Okay, I don't use any previous lore. I went, fuck it, I'm going to make my own.
Yep.
And it's fine. It's fine. It's fine if you make it believable.
Yes, you got to make it believable.
I feel personally insulted when I'm sitting there watching a movie And it's like the writers, the directors is trying to pull the wool over your eyes, and things do not seem logical. Like in this film, there's this one scene where she writes that rune on her hand, and it supposedly stops the demons.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And I would say, hey, now that they stop, why don't you just go ahead and start, killing them? Instead, they walk past them. She leaves, and then the same demons came back and attacked the majority of their.
No, I actually laughed at that because I'm like, and it disappeared. So not only, she stops the demons, it disappears. None of them they got the weapons to kill the demons.
Sure, right.
Killing the demons before and after this one little cutscene. And they're like trying to sneak through them. Like if I bump one of these demons, something's going to happen. And then all of her friends die anyway. So it's like, okay, so you're the worst friend ever because you could have saved them. And now you made their kids orphans. Congratulations.
I mean, they could have started slashing the demons. I mean, I don't see. And at that point, like I said, I can't take the film seriously because at that point, it's just a comedy. I mean, I think it's a failure on the director because I think a big part of movies is getting people's emotions involved, on getting people to root for your protagonist, to get them, involved in it. And when you do things like that, when you direct the movie or you I don't even know how to say it. It's when you allow things to happen, it's like.
See, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of people at fault here. I know, obviously, the director and everything. This was supposed to have been adapted from books, and that's also where a challenge can come from, because when it comes to movie, there's a 3-act structure, which is perfect for the medium because it tells a story in the most effective way to maximize entertainment, to maximize suspense, to maximize with basis on time,
Sure.
And so a lot of times when you do an adaptation, because in a book, there's not really that same structure. And so...
Well, in the film, it has to be more condensed anyway than it would be in the book.
Yeah, it's very, very condensed. It's very structured. It's like music. We talked about this before. It's like it goes up and down throughout the movie.
Yep.
Whereas a book, you can literally write anything, whether it's a good book or not, is relevant. But there is no set structure that says by page 30, you need to be here. By page 50, you need to be here, or whatever,
Yep.
So that adaptation becomes rougher,
Yeah.
I get the adaptation. There's a lot that's seemingly lost in translation. And I think a good director, a good scriptwriter, they would be able to convey what's in the book, because they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. They'd be able to convey it even without explicitly stating it, but the message would still be able to be conveyed in a way that the audience would be able to see it and understand it and be on the same page. But I think with this movie, they left a lot out, and a lot of the things it was missing so much that you can't really get into it and understand, because there's so many questions left unanswered. It almost feels like there should be a part 2 to it, but I probably wouldn't want to watch it if it's anything like it.
Yeah, I think they had too much going on, because you had a protagonist who was half angels and you had demons, okay, which in a normal movie, that's what you would have, angels and demons.
Sure.
Then you had werewolves, then you had vampires, then, you had all these different mythological creatures. Even the vampires were after the cup. Well, why would the vampires be after the cup? If vampires want to multiply, the typical, and like I said, you can kind of make your own lore here, sure, but the typical consensus for a vampire to reproduce or recreate is to bite in somebody's neck.
Okay.
and then they become a vampire. I don't need a magical cup in order for me to
Right.
use.
And it seemed like the vampire did like what's that friend Simon,
Simon.
and nothing came out of nothing came of it. It's like, oh,
But they kind of hinted that it did. Like that was the weird part. Like when he was when he when he was inside the nursing area, it was he kind of gave off the idea that maybe he was changing into a vampire. But then he doesn't.
he's standing in the sunlight, swinging a shell at a demon's face. Like, what's going on?
My personal favorite was like during the climax when what's his face was his face? I'm looking at my notes. Hodge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Hodge betrays him, brings in Valentine.
Yeah.
Then he
Wait, you didn't have 20/20 vision to see that was gonna happen.
no, like even because there's gonna be some things that are kind of predictable in movies.
Yep.
What I found funny was he brings in all these demons and then just magically changes his mind and then tries to stop them. It's like, well, where did his change of mind come from?
Right.
There's nothing in there that was at stake. And then there's more little conflict with, I guess he couldn't leave the place, but Valentine was just like, you're afraid, that's it. It's like, did you cast a spell on him? Is there some real reason why he can't leave it? Like, why can't
Man, you guys are too deep into this movie. I thought of it as just a fantasy for entertainment film, and you guys are going deep.
That's why we have our podcast, Jose.
I understand. And I'm like, man, and I'm looking at it again. I'm like, man, for me, I talked to you before. We talked about the podcast. And for me, if a movie entertains me, I'm good with it. I am good unless it and just 2 hours and 10 minutes goes by so painfully slow that, oh my God, I just like the movie that we were going to watch, Paw Patrol. I was almost finished with that movie, kind of off and on zooming because it is for kids. but this one I found to be entertaining. It 2 hours and 10 minutes went by pretty fast for me. But you guys
was entertaining, like people would say it's entertaining, is because there are lots of action, lots of stakes. They did a really good job of amplifying
trailers because if you see, I cannot watch I'm very technical, so I cannot watch a movie without understanding this is this or that is that. Now, if I go into a movie and the movie's not to be taken seriously, like Blazing Saddles, or then I could be like, okay, yes, I could give it leeway. I'm not technical with it. But a movie like this, where it tries to take itself seriously and it just falls short in so many different aspects.
Oh, that's what's good about our podcast is you get 3 different viewpoints so that people can know, hey, should I watch this crap? I'm doing it literally from the standpoint of a dude who literally spends hours and hours a day writing screenplays.
Sure.
And knowing that if I submitted some of these screenplays to any analyst, they would rip it apart. And this is how they would rip it apart, is because one of the things that they ask for in a movie, and I've showed you the notes and the coverage as an analyst on the screenplays that I've written, like even the last one, I after reading it, I was like, cool, I'm going to rewrite this thing because I don't like the fact that it's not flowing perfectly.
Sure.
As like if I'm telling you something in a story, then I have to link it to a believable or something that you can understand, or there has to be some reason for me to mention it. You know, I can't just mention something and be like, hey, here's a symbol, and then go on with my life. That symbol has to play out through the movie.
Yeah.
Like in the Blood Queen, like I introduced a sword in the Blood Queen and how she had to get that sword.
Sure.
I didn't just go, oh, she now has a sword. I introduced that sword in about 4 other scenes,
Yep.
and ultimately into the climax. And so you have to be very mindful of how you tell these stories so that people can follow them. Because there's some people like you, Jose. I could just have action scenes and high stakes all through the movie, and you'll just be okay with that.
Yeah. I mean,
There's a lot of people.
I interpret things this is what they probably mean here, or this is what, because most movies are that way. You can see one movie one way and I can see another. And that's why I love the podcast, because we all have our opinions. But if I see a movie, I'll think of it, okay, they meant this. You see a movie, they meant this. And Seth will see a movie, okay, they meant this. And which is great, because then that's what a movie should do. It should give you various viewpoints on how you're watching it, depending on what you think that genre is and what it should be about. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that is a problem also with screenwriting, is you have a delicate balance.
Sure.
Because there's an idea that you usually hear it in cells, but less is more.
Okay.
But in screenplays, you have to tell enough to make you think and follow the story, but not too much to where you are telling them everything.
Exactly.
Because there's a certain level of making you kind of think about it and come to terms and figure out in your head what's going on. So there's some challenges, but yeah, definitely here they left a lot of plot specific points. That's the problem. You can't leave plot specific points.
Okay.
Just unmentioned. So I could try to figure out, like, there's a lot about the cup. The cup is a very plot specific item.
Yeah.
It's the whole story is around this damn cup.
Sure.
But there's still a lot of information about this cup that you're like, does it sometimes work? Does it only work with certain people? Did it work at certain times? Like there was a lot of things about that cup that just...
Right. It was.
Well, Jace did say that there's 2 ways to be a Shadowhunter. You're either born of a Shadowhunter, or you have to drink from the cup in order to become one.
Okay, but that's what I'm getting.
So that's for their part. That's what made Shadowhunters.
Yeah, but it doesn't explain why everybody else would
wants the cup. Yeah, I mean,
because
for their gain as well. That's how I took it.
Well, yeah, you get it. But then Valentine, he didn't drink the damn cup. You know what I'm saying? And he's the one who wanted the cup more than anybody else.
I think he just wanted it to make more demons, to make himself more powerful.
Then under the guise, he would have drank the cup himself to create demons, because
it was. From my understanding, he had already drunk from the cup, so he was already powerful. Yeah. So he wanted it so that he could create more Shadowhunters, which I can't tell if the Shadowhunters were the bad guys or
exactly.
All of them were bad guys. And one thing I couldn't get over with, they didn't do a very good job of establishing characters, because you would see a character like one scene they'll be friendly, they'll be good, and then the next scene they're like upset, and it's just so dramatic, and it's like, whoa, what's going on? So I think an important thing about storytelling is establishing your characters. And a lot of movies, they would have like someone that's hardcore in the Marines taking orders, and then in the next scene they define all orders because of an emotional realization, and it just doesn't flow. And with a movie, you want to establish your characters, and you want to be able to have that character stay true to themselves throughout those.
Also, you want to have internal conflicts and growth in the characters, so the characters can change. But the thing is, you have to explain what in them.
Yeah,
because like even in scenes, like did a scene with 2 twins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they start off hostile, but after a couple of scenes, now they're more working together,
Sure.
because of other factors,
Yep.
We want to have these kinds of conflicts and changes of emotions, because we like that shit. Like I said, it's music. Emotions got to change, You know, like when a scene starts and a scene ends, somebody's got to be a little bit more angry or a little less angry, a little happier, a little less happier. There has to be some objective change and even moods. Yeah, how characters operate. It's just, it's got to make sense. So, like with the Marine example that you gave, if you took a hardcore Marine, then something tragically must have happened to where his loyalties would change.
Sure. Right.
But you need to explain, where did his loyalties change?
How that character evolves is a big aspect of, I think, filmmaking.
Yeah.
Character development, I think, is like 90% of a story. You know, I think character development, dialogue, the emotions, the journey between the protagonists. And that's where I think that this one failed, is like it wasn't so much about the journey of the protagonist. And I think movies should be entirely about the journey of the protagonist, because you don't really know what the problem is until Act 3. You don't really know what the plot is until Act 3. But you're along this fucking journey the whole way through. You're going through Act 1. You're going through the midpoint. You're going through the climax with them.
Yeah.
And yes, the protagonist has to win, but you should be able to make that win make sense, or make it in a way that we give a shit. We care. I didn't care how she won. She kicked the dude into a portal. That made no sense to me. Yes, she won. In theory, she won. But to me, like, I still have questions, like, because you just told me anybody who goes through that portal, it's based on what their intent is. Well, if you kick Valentine into the portal, his intent is to kill everybody and create demons.
Yeah, but Jace did say, if you go through a portal, you can get lost in your own mind if you are not focused to specifically pick a place you want to go. At that point, and I took it as, at that point, he wasn't really thinking about where he wanted to go. You know what I mean? He just was more, aware of that. Hey, I have this cup that he thought was the real cup in his hand, so he wasn't even thinking until she kicked him through. So he didn't have a chance to say, okay, I want to go to this place. That's how I took it.
Like I said,
you know,
I didn't like
again.
I don't like ending. I would have done the ending different.
That's how I took it. That's how I took it. So I'm like, okay. I don't know how you guys.
I mean, like I said, but I gave it a 6.5. Like I said, if you're just looking for high impact, high stakes, just action the whole way through, you can sit through this movie.
Sure.
You may check your phone a few times, maybe on Facebook a few times, but you can survive the movie. I would definitely not say it was a great movie.
Yeah. I think it's probably the studio that really did a disservice to this movie, because they have a lot of executives that kind of pick and say, oh, we don't want this in here, or don't put this in here. And I think a lot of times they have to work with them. And sometimes good movies get ruined because people just, there's a creative aspect and there's a business aspect, and trying to merge them, sometimes it's a bigger compromise than.
Well, absolutely, because when you take a spec script and you sell it, there's a pretty good chance that the director's going to put in his stuff.
Yeah.
And then the actors are going to put in their stuff. And all these people are going to add to your story. So when it becomes the production script, it may or may not be
your story,
the script in which you started out with.
Yeah.
And for them, yes, it is a lot, because there was a time frame where these simple action movies, because we were all alive during the 2000s. We were all alive during the 90s, 2000s. Yep. Every movie in the 90s, 2000s really had no real story to them. They were just action. You know what I'm saying? Like all of them. And that was good back then. I think in today's world, the demand for real stories is increasing. and changing. Especially with streaming services and different things. There's a lot more demand. I think the demand of the story is changing, but you still have a lot of people stuck in that mentality. I can throw in a whole bunch of action and be good.
Yeah.
I can create the next Blade. I can create the next, So I think that's just kind of where we are, and it's just going to be painful. I mean, already a lot of these companies have lost billions and billions of dollars. Amazon's lost billions, Disney's lost billions, Marvel, all these companies have lost billions because people are demanding more. They're not demanding the same things anymore.
Sure.
But yeah, I think this was a great podcast. Obviously we'll do another movie next week. Now I get to do it with two of my good friends, so this is really fantastic, I think.
So your overall consensus?
It sucked. I could write better in my dreams.
I would say hells to the yeah to just go ahead and watch it because
I'm too white for this Hells to the yeah.
So that's
listen, I'll give it a 6.5. Like if it's on Netflix and I scroll through it, I might turn it off.
Yeah.
I wouldn't pay for this movie. Not even $2, not even $1. It could be in $1 theater. They could actually probably pay me to watch it, and I probably still wouldn't watch it. But if I'm going through Netflix and I'm just absolutely bored, and I'm just happen to scroll upon it, I might turn it on. So that's why I gave what I gave. But I think Seth gave it a pretty good score and a reasonable score if you're doing based on script.
Sure.
Like it would I would give it a 4 on script.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean the CGI, everything, it was on point. Like the acting was great. The graphics, it was great. It was good. It's just the delivery. It's the storyboard. That's the only thing. It was very religious too. It's extremely religious, very occultish. Me personally, I wouldn't really. It's not a movie I would watch. But I know some people.
That you're not gonna buy tickets to the sequel.
No. I wouldn't. There's some people that would like it, but it wasn't very enjoyable. Well, it was because I laughed at it after a while. It was very comical. So I did like that aspect of it.
I did like the reality of her putting her friend in the friend zone. You're like risked his life for her, was like the best man for her, and she's just like, nah, I have none of it. But she still wanted to have
whole life stuff going on too.
She still wanted him around. I'm like, that is the most realistic thing in this whole movie.
Yeah, and at the end of it, you still don't know what's going on, what's true, what's not. You have some idea, but it's like it doesn't come full circle. It doesn't close out the movie in a way you would expect. The action is good. The computer generated graphics, all that stuff, it was good. It wasn't a linear storyline.
So you wouldn't recommend it?
Not to people of like minds.
So for his birthday, I'm gonna buy him paraphernalia for movies.
Sounds good.
For the gym or whatever. All right, so until next week. But hey, Seth, you're picking a movie for next week.
Okay, sounds good.
Because like I said, I couldn't watch the Pups thing, and I'm actually kind of glad because I'll be honest, like I said, I don't like kids, so I don't really watch kids' movies. It was actually probably going to be torture for me.
That's good. A lot of content.
So until next week.
Have a great week, gentlemen.
All right.